Hey, Jules the Doula here, welcoming you to the Virtual Mama Connection. Listen in with me every week as we bring you birth stories and experiences straight from our parents' hearts, always providing you a lifeline of education and communication, keeping you ahead of the game with the best care providers and educators. And just a little reminder out there, anything you hear on our podcast is not to be used as medical advice. Please visit our disclaimer on thevirtualmamaconnection.com. I think you're really going to like this segment. We have Reinaldo Sheffield on discussing a father's absence. Reggie has his master's degree from ASU. He has extensive training in perinatal and anxiety disorders. He's very passionate about helping dads support their significant other through these transitional times, as well as helping lead their families in a successful manner. You can find him over at Women's Health Innovations of Arizona. He's a major contributor over there. And let's settle into the segment. I hope you enjoy it, A Father's Absence. Oh my gosh, Reggie, I am so glad you're here with us today. Yes. We need more men on this podcast. We need more voices, the male voice. We need that out there. And
absolutely.
Yes, and upcoming dads, they need to know more of like what they're in store for, what's coming. And I love this topic of a father's absence and what does that mean to a child, and just dive in here and talk to us about that, because you have experience and so much knowledge in this area.
Yes. I mean, being a father of four, definitely has some experience, and
yes.
And not to dive into my background or anything, but I mean, I grew up without my dad. I mean, I had father figures, in my life who kind of played a role, but just some things that I've learned just on the path of life is, a father is a biological definition, but being a dad, that's a title that's earned.
I like that. It's true.
So, and it's easy for a father to love his children, but on the other hand, on a dad to show it is another whole ball game. So one quote that I really love from Billy Graham is it just says a father is one of the most unsung, unpraised, unnoticed, and yet one of the most valuable assets in our society. And what blows me away with that is it just says society in all of the statistics that kind of supports that, not just in the home or in the church or in your social setting, but in society. And that just kind of blows me away. So, I mean, in my opinion, I feel the word masculinity is kind of being watered down just with all social media and just all the things that we encounter today. But the truth is that we need strong men. We need
Definitely.
strong men to raise strong families, and to strong men to lead the house. And father absences is definitely a crisis here in America, not necessarily in America, but all over the world, and especially in the Black community. But according to the Census Bureau, 18.4 million children, that's 1 in every 4 children, live without a biological stepfather, adoptive father in the home.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And that's for the Black community, it's over 75%, which is it's crazy. And I read in Point Man, a book by Steve Farrar, the enemy's strategy is to isolate man and take them away from the family, and it just creates so many issues for society.
Well, we need a balance, right? We need a balance yes. We need the masculine and the feminine, but we definitely need the masculine in the family unit.
Yes. And for decades in America, single parent household has been on the rise. As we see our marriage rate is on the decrease. However, birth rates outside of marriage is on the rise as well. And there was a study done of 130 countries and territories showing that the U.S. has the highest rate of children living in a single parent home.
Why do you think that is? What do you think's going on?
Um, I honestly, I feel like just the world's view on, I guess, the responsibility of being a parent. I think the divorce rate, people thinking that if it doesn't work out, hey, I almost feel like the whole what is it, FOMO, or YOLO? Sorry, YOLO. You only live once, and it's just
Oh,
thinking about me and not necessarily thinking about everyone involved. Bringing a kid into the world, and that's your responsibility. Or it's a blessing that in some settings you have family support, where there's grandparents raising children and stuff like that. So I think it's just a big thing. Examples that was probably set before them,
yes.
that just kind of keeps recycling this same cycle.
So how do you think we break the cycle, right? Like we have to educate, and that's kind of what
Yes.
we're doing here, right? And an
Uh-huh.
awareness of, hey, look what's going on, and then look what's going on in our families. Look what's
Mhm.
going on in society right now.
Mhm.
Right.
And conversations I have, because that's a great question, and where we can start at is in our homes. You being present, but I use the term present, but hands-on in your own home. Um, and I think that's where it starts. Setting standards in your own home, being there, and I guess ultimately taking on that responsibility of raising your child.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
And then what do we say to men? Well, and we need to say it to moms too. I mean, you still can do things like when you said you want to get out there and do the things that we want to do. Like, well, I
Hmm.
still want to go golf. I still want to go to the gym, whatever it
Yeah,
is that you
yeah,
like to do.
yeah.
But at the end of the day, we have to roll up back to the child, the baby, whoever that those young ones that are at home, and be responsible for them. So how do you think, excuse me, we can have that balance?
Um, One thing I talk about with dads is this community is huge. Whether that community is, I mean, family, friends, church, any of your social groups, community is going to be huge. And that's just where, I mean, like you said, you can still do those things, but
Right.
understanding that um, there's a responsibility there. You just can't just up and leave.
How do we teach our young men that? If
How do
they
we teach
haven't
our
been
young?
seeing it, right? Like if
Mhm,
they haven't been seeing it, they didn't grow up with that role model or
mhm.
the father that did that. So
Yeah.
then they don't know. So
Mhm.
how do we start instilling this really,
It's it's going to start in um, for so my background, in churches, getting them
Okay.
involved in these groups. I think there's so many different programs out there, but it's just getting them connected to these groups, whether it's through your church or your local YMCA. There's so many resources out there in regards to just um, groups for men. Now, the big piece of that is just being vulnerable and attending to it, but it's having that, and I guess it's having some type of, be willing to be coached by someone who's like a mentor or something like that.
I like that.
Um, but it's the dropping the ego piece and realizing that you want to take on this responsibility, because it's making the decision that, hey, this kid is mine. And but I guess understanding the impacts of the damage that could potentially be done.
Right. Like you talk about here, do you want to discuss about how the effect of like kids growing up without a dad, that what they're more
Yes,
likely to do?
yes, yes. And statistics shows in the research that kids who grow up without a dad in the home are more likely to have behavioral problems, drop out of school, face depression, anxiety, or potentially other mental health issues. Struggle financially is a huge one. Financial literacy, or become sexually promiscuous, or be faced with uh, teenage pregnancy. Using drugs, alcohol, becoming aggressive or violent, um, and they like these things because um, so these things that they probably experience, it's almost repeating that cycle, and then they end up leaving their children when they become parents. And a story I like to joke around and say, my wife, she does a lot of stuff in the community, and she was just talking to her boss about um, just by the father being in the home, how successful the chances they have. And to narrow it down, even in the Black family, just having that dad in the home, your kids are 75%, have a 75% chance of just being successful in life just by
Wow.
being there. Yeah. And then just it only adds if they're hands on and they're actually engaging in their kids' lives, which is just mind blowing. So that's
Yeah,
like
that's
just
huge.
be there. Yeah. Just being there, being present.
Well, what do we say, to the men out there? Oh, it's really not that big of a deal, and mom's the one that's usually raising the kid. It really should be the balance of mom and
Yes.
dad, right?
Yeah, and that I feel like it's a myth that we kind of ran with. Um, but it's that it's like I always tell them, like, it's your kid too. Sometimes we're afraid to, or it's like we live up to that society saying that, oh, only moms can do this. And not to take anything away from moms, but
Sure.
it takes two. Like, mom doesn't always have to lead. And I know one of the things that um moms struggle with, like, they just feel that the dad should just know when they need help. And it's just like, you know just jump in there, hold your child, let mom go and out in the community, or do something, or just get some time to herself. And like, and there's so many positive things that comes out of that, because you build a bond with the child. You build I want to say a sense of security in your partner, and just so many good things that can come out of that, just by you just stepping up and just doing these things here, and it builds your confidence as a parent.
100%. I always encourage my dads, even right after birth. The big thing now, right, is we do that skin to skin. You have the baby on
Yes.
you for that hour, and then
Hmm.
they take the baby and they go over to the little warmer. And naturally, what do they all do? All the babies cry as soon as we take them
Yes.
off of mama, right? And I always tell my dads, go with the baby. The baby knows your voice. Hold your
Hmm.
baby's hand.
Yes.
Start talking to your baby. That's the part that makes me cry in every
Yeah.
birth, because the babies stop crying.
Yeah.
They try to open their eyes. They are trying to connect with their dad, and they are looking like, oh, there he is.
Yes.
That's my protector. There he
Yes.
is. And then they stop crying. And then when moms do the skin to skin, yes, that's awesome. And we want to always do that. But dads need to do the skin to skin too,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Just like, yeah, all these moms are nursing their babies, 100%. I'm all for it. But dads need to be able to feed their babies when they're the little newborns as well.
Yeah.
Give them a slow flow bottle. I'm all about
Yeah.
that, because I don't
Right.
want,
Right.
we don't want to take that away from our dads, or
Hmm.
we also don't want to take it away from the baby getting
Yes.
that time, because I think what you're talking about starts then, from the
Yes.
very beginning, right?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And lost it. My thought just ran away from me. Um,
Well,
just thinking about oh
go ahead.
thinking about just when I had my son. And it's for a mother, you've been carrying this baby, for 9 months. And I'm so happy that you brought that up, because sometimes we feel like it's so surreal until the baby gets here, and you feel like you don't have that connection. But like you mentioned, they do. They know your voice, they hear your voice. And this is where the education piece just needs to know that, like, dads, even though you're not carrying this kid, but like
Oh yeah.
that baby knows. That baby knows. So
Yeah, I talk about it in one of my classes where I really encourage dads to start reading like a bedtime story or
mhm,
sing. If you like to sing, sing to your baby every day.
mhm,
Read to the baby. And this is while they're still in utero, right?
yes.
Because they are hearing dad's voice. And this just carries over. Or so many of my moms will say, oh, yeah, the baby's been just kind of like chilling inside in utero. Here comes daddy. Daddy's home. Daddy puts his hand on my stomach and the baby's like, all active. And
Yes,
it's because
yes.
they know, hey, there he
Yeah,
is, right?
yeah, yeah. And I think just if the education piece, if dads know these things, that
Yeah.
it changes the trajectory of things, you know.
Yeah. It starts from the very beginning. Have fun,
Yes,
be engaged, be involved right from the beginning.
yes, yes.
Well, so even like you said, you have a son. I don't know how many boys you have. I know you
Yes.
you said you have 4 kids, but so teaching, being that role model for your son or boys now is now instilling things for them as they grow into men as to how to
Yes.
be, right? So
Yeah.
like what are some things we should be really teaching our boys?
This concept of saving the boys, it comes to it's out of the point, man. It's a phenomenal book, but um just being one things that I want to instill into my kids is just that, I mean, obviously, the basic things, the work ethic, but just being present in everything that you do, and then just I show that example through them, and it's just a standard that we live by, that I do my best to kind of live by. Being financially literate. I mean, obviously when they're young, but I got three boys, 9,
Oh,
7, and 5, and then we finally got our baby girl who's 16 months.
oh,
I keep telling everybody she's 16 weeks and she's like barely walking. They're like, "What?" My wife's always there to correct me. I'm like, 16 months. Let me make sure I get that right. But like, I just,
congratulations.
thank you, and it's just including them in those things, because like these are going to be things that it's going to impact them, their upbringing, how they operate in society. I prioritize my marriage, and that's just the standard, because I want to set the example. Like, this is the way you treat. Um, this is the way I treat your mother. This is the way you should treat women. And instead of telling them this is what you do, it's a lot of pressure, to be honest with you. 3 boys,
I
and it's
bet.
just that example, setting that example for them, but like leading by example, not necessarily by my words, and not conforming to what society standards are. Um, as I mentioned, the divorce rate is on the decline, or I mean, sorry, is increasing.
Sure.
And like, you could sleep around and do all these different things, treat women certain ways, and it's just teaching them things that, like, that's not right. You know,
Giving them
of
values and
yes,
standards.
yes, and it's yeah, like I said, it's so much pressure. It's like living in a glass house, but it's worth it. It's worth it because I love it. It's not me parenting my 3 boys now, but I'm parenting my grandchildren. And I
Exactly.
think
Yeah.
that's just so powerful, and it's just that kind of keeps me on the forefront in it. And there's a saying out there: parenting is the most important responsibility that most of us will ever face, and none of us do it perfectly.
No.
So I'm always asking for grace, apologizing to them, and point out the things that they do right. And it's not always bells and whistles for the most part. 3 boys, they starting to talk back, and demonstrating their strength and stuff. And I gotta let them have a healthy fear of dad. So
Right. Right. Well, and now I know your little girl is 16 months, but you will be also a role model for a young little girl as well.
yes, which that is That one's interesting. It's fun because I was just like, I always kind of like observe the masses and try to do the opposite. And everyone says, you have your little girl, she will have you wrapped around her little fingers. And like the funny thing, my boys, they've been wanting a dog forever. And I'm like, no, like you guys aren't responsible for it. Or if you demonstrate that you're responsible for it, then we'll have that conversation. But I'm like, you can have whatever you want. Like it doesn't even matter. Like we'll figure it out. So but I mean, the same thing with her. It's how her brothers treat people, how her father treats people, and that's just going to be her expectations because she shouldn't have to, look far for an example outside of her home.
Which is good. And
Mhm.
young girls need that.
Yeah, and I feel like that's one of the main things that I can control, and not like in a possessive way, but the most impact it starts in the home.
Yeah, definitely. Well, what would you say the biggest thing, if you reflect back in your childhood, that you and the big reason why you take such a strong presence as far as being a father and a dad to your kids? What would
Um,
you say to all those dads out there that are considering, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Like it's not gonna, it's not gonna make that big of a difference. What do you want to
um,
say to them?
so what would I say to them? Um, Not being afraid to mess up,
Mm.
being there and not being afraid to mess up. And that's one of the myths out there that if you do something wrong, like you're not going to ruin your kid. Um, that's where grace comes in. But just be there and be engaged. Don't be afraid to mess up in front of your kids, but be able to talk about it as well. So
Lots of communication, being open and
yes,
honest with
yes,
your
and it's
feelings too, right? With your feelings and like what's going on.
absolutely. I mean, I feel like that can be another whole conversation, just talking about, men and their feelings because there's such a negative connotation on it. And it doesn't have to be that way.
Right. Just because we have feelings doesn't mean we're weak. Right.
Exactly. Exactly.
I used to always tell my boys that, expressing your emotion or your feelings actually takes strength and courage,
Yes.
right? Like
Yes.
it's
Yes.
it's it's easy to just be like, oh, don't need to go
Hmm.
there. And that's a way to stuff it down or cop out. But
Yes.
really like bringing it to the table and well, even if you're crying, who
Yeah.
cares? If
Right.
that's your emotion and it takes strength to show that and be that.
Yes. Yeah. And same with my boys when they're at this interesting age. It's fun, it's challenging, but when they're crying and stuff or they're angry, like tell me about it. Like, how do you feel? And it's okay to be mad, but you just can't stay there. So hey, let's go take a break and do what we need to do to get ourselves together. And sometimes they try to use it to their advantage so they can go outside, play basketball for extra 10, 15 minutes. But yeah, it's okay to be there, or it's okay to be angry, but you just can't stay there.
That's so good you're teaching them that because
Yeah.
that's the real world, right? And
Hmm.
everyone's going to have anger or sadness, frustration at
Yes.
times. It's
Yep.
just, it's life.
Yes. Yes.
So teaching the kids as a father, so important to hear that perspective with responsibility for our actions. What we do
Yes.
have consequences and our feelings, same with the feelings, you
Hmm.
know,
Yeah.
let them just speak to you.
Yeah.
Well, Reggie, I want to thank you so much for being here. Is there anything else that you want to leave our dads or any of our listeners with for the impact of a father's absence in the
Um,
family?
I mean, your presence is key. Just being there, it just gives so much hope for your kids in the home. I mean, obviously, if it's an unsafe situation, we want to, make sure we're addressing the proper channels to make sure. But just being there, it makes a world of difference. Don't be afraid to ask for help. That's one thing that we struggle with so much. Just asking for help. There's so much resource. There's so many people out there that actually do want to help. Just that one guy that you kind of look up to. don't be afraid to ask some questions, or you're not going to look weak. I feel like that's a myth. I mean, for you to ask those hard questions, that, like you mentioned, like that's strength and wisdom in that, in my opinion, that you're
I
willing
agree.
to ask for help. So don't be afraid to ask, for help. And we're all, it takes I say it takes a selective community to raise a kid. So utilize that.
Right. And then you are associated with Women's Health Innovations. I love that.
Yes, yeah. So with Women's Health Innovation, we do a men's support group on Wednesday nights from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. And that's actually tonight. And we talk about an array of things, addressing mental health to I think just recently I did a slideshow on just how fatherhood can impact your friendships, because becoming a new dad, responsibility changes, and sometimes you miss those nights of going out with the boys and just hanging out. But it doesn't mean it has to change. It just has to, things just have to look different.
They shift.
Yes. And in those classes, I try to make it, people need to laugh. It's good to I try to make it engaging. We have some funny videos in there, some good back and forth, and it is a support group. But a group doesn't necessarily mean it's just one person sitting there talking about their feelings and stuff. There's so much things that can be learned from other people's experience. And I encourage other men to kind of go and share some things that they struggle with, or something, or some victories that they've overcome. And like there's so much learning through that dialogue in the group. So I know men's group, it's a struggle, but it's a fight that I'm willing to fight, because it's needed. It's
It
needed.
is needed. It is needed. Now, is that virtual or do you guys meet in person?
That is virtual.
I
We
love
had
that.
we had, and that's what I mean. Technology, it gets its bad name sometimes, but like even this platform that you created is just it's awesome, in the reach that you have virtually. But that was like our thoughts. Dads have so much stuff going on, and to
Yeah.
add another thing on their plate, it's easier for them to either do it on the go, where they're, or not that we would necessarily say on the go, but if they're
Right.
can't make it home, but they can log on from their phone, their computer, and they don't have to leave their house and stuff. So
I love that
yeah,
because you're still keeping them connected. They can ask
exactly.
questions. They can hear another guy being like, "Oh my God, this is the story of my life right now." Right.
Right, right.
And then that connection helps them maybe get through, and maybe they even meet new people through the group that they have stuff in common with at the time.
Yes, yes. And even because some dads, we're all at different places, and sometimes they're not ready for a group. So I definitely encourage, like, um some fathers groups on like social media. Like there's phenomenal groups to connect with, and on like Facebook. So utilizing those things, it's I'm connected with a few of them, and just because I'm always willing to learn. There's parenting is, it's this everyone's still trying to figure it out, and
Yes, we
truth of the
are.
matter is, yeah, I don't know if we'll ever figure it out, but hey, um
I don't
just
think we
utilizing,
do.
right, utilizing all the resources that we can.
Isn't that, I think that's part of the journey, right?
Yes,
We
exactly.
just keep seeking. That's part of life, trying to get better,
Yeah.
constantly improve ourselves and our families and our personal lives. And so we need resources and groups and connection to do that. And I really
Yes.
value that you are there at Women's Health Innovations. And I encourage all of our listeners and our dads out there, you know what, join. How do they find out? They just go to the website and then put in men's group.
Yeah, so I believe it's, oh, I don't know it off the top of my head, but if you go to WHI of Arizona, and it'll have a tab on there, like all the groups, and it'll have list of
Sure.
everything that we have throughout the week. So our father support group is on Wednesdays, and you can find all our other different groups and resources that we offer throughout the week.
Awesome. Well, Reggie, thank you
Yeah.
so much for being here. I know that we will be able to have you on other segments, and I can't wait. And I know our listeners are going to be looking forward to that as well. So thank you so
Yes.
much.
Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity, and I'll be connecting some of my male friends who's in this field as well, because they have knowledge and stuff, that education that we just need to get out there to other men. So
Oh, I'd love it. Have them call
yes,
me. Yes.
yes,
We'll have
yes,
them
totally.
on. Okay.
Yes. Mhm.
All right, Reggie. Thank you so much. You have a great day. Go take care of those 4 kids of yours.
Oh yes, it's a nonstop job.
I
So
know.
all right, thank you.
This segment brought to you by Cave Creek Beer Borough. Add a little personality to your next party, wedding, or corporate event. Invite Cave Creek Beer Bros to entertain your guests, arriving in style and serving your beer, wine, or beverage of choice. We guarantee they will be the talk of your party. Check them out at cavecreekbeerborough.com or call 602-505-8559. You'll be glad you did.